The Oklahoma Sooners added another quarterback.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. The Oklahoma Sooners added another quarterback, Jay.
I was a little bit shocked while at the same time understanding the strategy. You need multiple quarterbacks in your room that can be healthy just in case of emergency situations, as in, injury bug hits you or something. Knock on wood, that doesn't happen to us. But no, it made sense for Brent Venables and Ben Arbuckle to think, I think we should add one more body out there to play quarterback. And the one they got is a very intriguing one. Cole Gonzales, man, as I'm looking at him more and more, there's some very intriguing components to his game.
Yeah, so he's thrown for a lot of yards at the collegiate level. I mean, this is a kid that has more than threw for more than 2,500 yards in 2024. In 2023, he threw for 5 touchdowns in 3 different games. This season alone in week 8 against Furman. So if you're looking for a highlight tape to go watch of our guy, go watch the Furman tape. He threw for 620 yards and 5 touchdowns. So it's a dude that has thrown a lot of passes in 22 games over 3 seasons, threw for more than 6,000 yards, 49 touchdowns and 20 interceptions. So I don't know. It's an intriguing option. And I know a lot of people are going to scoff at he played at the FCS level. Cam Ward was at FCS, Incarnate Word, before ending up at Washington State. Josh Heupel was at Weber State before he went to somewhere else, Snow College, and then before he ended up at Oklahoma.
Utah State, yeah.
Dude, the FCS, yes, it's not the highest level of college football, but that doesn't mean there can't be some diamonds in the rough down there.
Yeah, there's always one or two there that you're going to find inside of there, and if you find the right one and you find that diamond in the rough, boom, you can go. It's kind of funny, John, as you're talking about some of the other players from like a Cam Ward to a Josh Heupel who went for FCS up back into this level. A lot of people were scuffing at your tweet that you talked about Oklahoma going the Moneyball route. And what people forget about the Moneyball game wasn't that it was just about being cheap. The goal was to find production that actually already exists and leverage that within the calculations of the way the lineup should look. So you're looking for players that if I lose out on 30 receptions for 600 yards, you're going to try to find a guy that has produced 30 receptions to 600 yards to bring in to replace said production. We were losing out on a lot of production. We didn't lose out on very much production, actually, in a lot of the players that we lost, besides like a Bowers Sharp, who was critical. And then, of course, our quarterback room took a massive hit. You're replacing it with production that has actually shown on the field, because most likely in that scenario, those players are going to actually still produce something when they come out there. They've already tasted the game. They understand how much faster the collegiate level is in comparison to high school. So when Brent Venables and staff is looking at guys that don't feel like they are game breakers, it's probably because there's not very many of them in the portal anyway, but you're looking for production and you don't want to stifle development. Adding a player like Cole Gonzales, like I said, gives you a quarterback that plays. And there's the one thing that I think a lot of people are overlooking in this scenario. If Michael Hawkins does not win out in this quarterback battle, in which there is a chance, I'm going to give him about a 30% chance to win this out. So I'm being very generous. If he does not win this out, the goal is for him to redshirt. You want to preserve that redshirt that he lost last year as a true freshman, so that if John comes back one more year or John decides to leave, Mateer does, Michael Hawkins can go ahead and step right there in the reins. On top of that, though, John, think about it this way. Something happened to John Mateer. Do you want Michael Hawkins to go out immediately, or would you like a guy that has a whole bunch of throwing experience to go out there first? I take a guy that's thrown the ball a lot, that also hasn't been injured. So don't you dare throw Casey Thompson at me, people.
I also like the idea of having a veteran that can run my scout team. At the very minimum, if Cole Gonzales just comes in and runs the scout team, it's going to make the defense better. It's going to make the guys that are playing on the scout team, your wide receivers, your tight ends, everybody on that unit better because you've got an experienced dude. You're not leaving it to Jetinu, who I think he's got talent, but he's a very inexperienced guy because he's going to be a true freshman at the collegiate level. So I like that you're bringing in a veteran for that aspect. And listen, I think what Ben Arbuckle is looking for, he's looking for system fits. And while you might be able to find a system fit in the transfer portal from the Division I level, from the FBS level, from the SEC, he believes all these guys that they're bringing in are going to be system fits for him. And Cole Gonzales is going to be a system fit. So I think at minimum, you're bringing a veteran scout team quarterback. You bring in potential backup to John Mateer for 2025 if the goal is to redshirt Michael Hawkins. And then you just bring in more competition. Like, if competition and competitive depth is always the goal, then you can't just rest on laurels and say, no, we've got our three quarterbacks, we're going to roll with it. We've seen, I mean, look at Florida. Like, Florida was a team that was battered by injuries. They lost their starter, and then they lost DJ Lagway for a minute, and then we're having to go to their third string guy that had played at Yale the year before. So having some veteran depth, having that experience at quarterback, even if he's your third quarterback, that's fine. You at least have that experience that you can bring in an emergency situation. But if not, then you've got a guy that still has that experience that can help run your scout team, help your team develop off the field.
Yeah, especially a guy that has already read through collegiate level defenses or offensive play calling. So Ben Arbuckle can spend time with a Cole Gonzales as well as a Jetinu and Michael Hawkins really getting up to speed together. And usually the one that figures it out the fastest is the one that you'll see the most. But to your point, a scout team quarterback that has experience throwing it against defenses really does help. It helps a lot more than people understand. It's the psychological move from the high school level to the collegiate level where you're definitely going up against guys that are bigger, faster, and stronger than what you dealt with at high school, even at FCS. Like, I mean, we can make jokes as much as you want to, but truth be told, when you get into the FCS range, that's still the top 20% of high school players to play in the country, not just in the state, in the country. So you're still playing against some of the top talent. They just did not make it to the FBS level, which is the 1% of guys that are in the high school ranks across the country. And so I think Cole, like you said, he'll come in, he'll do a really good job of adding depth, not only competitive depth, but also add a component for the scout team to where you'll have a dude that's willing to throw the ball. Now, they probably throw the ball in practice in a way. We didn't really see much throwing in the games that we would have liked to have seen. Now you're going to have a dude that's going to force everybody to figure out how to throw the ball early and often. And I like the way seeing that Cole Gonzales knows how to command an offense, especially putting up the numbers like you pointed out. I mean, multiple 5-touchdown games, a 600-yard game this past season. And against NC State, he wasn't that bad when the numbers I saw you put out there.
Yeah, so he threw for 211 yards and 2 touchdowns against NC State. And listen, that was a pretty solid NC State defense. He also ran for 78 yards on 6 carries. So he's got a little bit of scoot to him too. So intriguing little dual threat option. I mean, nobody's going to confuse him for Kyler Murray, but an intriguing option in that light. Again, another FCS quarterback to mention before we get out of here on this topic, Diego Pavia was playing at New Mexico State last year. Dude turned out pretty good, right? Turned out pretty good.
He's all right. But he did do us a solid though. Getting that injunction right now for JUCO's got a waiver for some guys to be able to come back, and we talked about that last show. So yeah, that's actually pretty good thing to hear about.
So heroes come in all sizes, even from the FCS level. We got some top players coming back. Some really good news came over the last couple of days. Let's discuss those guys coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
The NFL playoffs are here, almost here, but it's not too late to get on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And the way FanDuel does it, they give you some great lines. Like, for example, this coming weekend, our Tampa Bay Buccaneers, yes, I did say our, because Baker Mayfield's the quarterback. They are 8.5-point favorites against the Carolina Panthers. They have no excuse not to win that game, as I've been keeping up with them. Carolina's not very good, but Tampa Bay should be able to be that good. And if you want to jump in on that action, you have the opportunity to do that. Also, not only do you whoever wins the game, FanDuel also has the bets for like players who score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, like your win totals, so much more. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Jay, the Oklahoma Sooners got some more good news over the holiday.
They did. It appears that some players have already decided they're going to make their valiant return, and somebody jumped the gun in sending out the message. I was actually looking it up yesterday. First off, Merry Christmas to you all. Hopefully you had a great Christmas yesterday. Was hoping to get an episode up, but both me and John had some fun with the kiddos, so we didn't get a chance to really sit down until, toy assembly always kicks your butt around this time of the season, especially with lower back pain. I'll tell you that part. But when it comes to this news, I was doing some digging on it or whatnot, and I saw somebody post on X about it, kind of pointing out that, usually when it comes to the One Oklahoma collective, for the marketing purposes, you want to spread out announcements. You don't want to do them all at one time. And unfortunately, some marketing person got a little bit excited and tossed two out. Now, one of them got deleted. You saw Kip Lewis. It looks like job's not done, so the anticipation he'll be back. We expected that. I didn't see Kip getting anything better than a day 3 grade right now. He may be really late day 2, but I think day 3 was probably the grade he's going to get today. So we expect him to command the defense and move himself into an early day 2 pick. But the one that jumped out to everybody was R. Mason Thomas, and it said that I'm coming back. See you next season. That's what it said. It said, see you next season, John. And so when I saw that, I'm like, okay, so Brent Venables out here, he cooking with grease. That's why you don't see us going after a whole bunch of these high guys. We went after some top players in the portal. They just ended up being in our own home. We kept people around because there's been nothing but rumors, John, floating around that R. Mason Thomas has been getting poked at by everybody with the tampering bug. They're like, hey, big head, you doing all right? You like football? I see you're good at it. We would love to pull you over and pay you a lot of money. Him and a few other players on the roster, and it looks like he's going to make the decision, because it hasn't officially been made yet, that he's going to make his valiant return next year and terrorize the SEC one more time.
And that's huge news, because you get a guy back with 9 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, and I think has more in the tank. I mean, I think he's an ascending player, somebody who I thought played the run really, really well. I mean, that's the stuff that doesn't always show up on the stat sheet, but he did a really good job playing the run. He was part of that defensive end duo with Ethan Downs that made them so good against the run. It's why teams had such a hard time running on the Oklahoma Sooners all season long. So you get R. Mason Thomas back, and that allows you to have a little bit of a competition out there at the other defensive end spot between Danny Okoye and Adepoju Adebaware and Nigel Smith and Alexander Shield Knight and Taylor Wayne. Like, you can use that other spot to develop guy and let competition see who's going to take a job or have a little bit of a rotation. Or if you like a guy that's still on a playoff team and you're thinking you might try to make a run at them if they hit the portal, then you've got some room to add. But having a bona fide pass rusher back on one side of your defensive line is going to be huge. If you can get another one of those, whether it's a guy that's in-house that you like their trajectory, that's going to be even better for Oklahoma. So you're not having to replace 2 defensive end spots. You're only replacing 1, and your defensive line is going to be very much intact going forward. Obviously, the loss of Ethan Downs, I think it moves the needle more than people want to admit. But having R. Mason Thomas comes back, it lessens the blow quite a bit. And I think his story is one that's going to end at Oklahoma. It's not going to end up at another collegiate school, because he was going to go to Iowa State, and Miguel Chavis came calling, right? Part of that 2022 recruiting class. After Miguel Chavis got to Oklahoma, he and Brent Venables came calling, got him to flip his commitment to come to Oklahoma. And I think this is a dude that, again, the patience, the perseverance, battling through all the injuries over the first 2 years to where he could finally stay healthy and then see that, rocket strapped to his back and then just emerge to be a star for the Sooners. And he's got a chance to be a top 15 pick in the 2026 NFL draft if he has another season like he just did this year.
Yeah, he has a very good chance, at least at minimum, very, very, very high day 2 pick, because the only thing that's kind of against R. Mason Thomas that probably holds him back with his draft status, his draft pick area, is because of his height. He's only 6'2", and you're usually seeing guys in the 6'4", 6'5" range that have drafted really high at the edge spot. But his tenacity when it comes across going on the line and hitting dudes and causing a lot of problems, disruptiveness at the end of games, has really gotten the eye of the NFL evaluators. They're like, yeah, we like it. I think this guy can make it work in the NFL. He gets low enough. He doesn't pull the Dylan Stewart stuff where he drops basically to his knees and comes right back up and plows somebody, but he does a really good job of getting around those tackles and making those hits. So having R. Mason Thomas back, you made a great point there, John, that now you have a competition on the opposite side between a Danny Okoye, a PJ Adebaware, kind of really duking out to who's going to really take over that other edge spot. Or, to be absolutely honest, it makes it easier for you to have a rotation with R. Mason and those young guys. Toss in maybe a Nigel Smith unless he decides to move into a 3 technique. Or you got Wyatt Gilmore, Taylor Wine. You've got multiple options of young players that got some run, and you got to see them be disruptive. But he also keeps you with a veteran that can help teach and get players to understand how to set that edge properly, as well as how to get around some of these tackles in the SEC and get some hits. It's going to be fun seeing him go through next season, because I honestly, I'm really excited to see him in that Michigan game.
It's going to be fun to see how this defensive end group continues to develop, because they've gotten better. Each year under Brent Venables, it's gotten better and better and better, and it's going to continue to get better. On Kip Lewis, I'm excited for his return. I knew he was going to be back just because I felt like he's a Brent Venables guy. This is another one of those dudes that is just emerging as a linebacker under Brent Venables. Undersized, it hasn't stopped him. Nope. It doesn't matter that he's, probably going to be somebody that ends up as a box safety at the NFL level. It hasn't slowed him down from being an incredibly disruptive player, and that just makes big plays. And having him back to go along with Kobe McKenzie and Lewis Carter and Samuel Omasigo and Jaron Cannick, it provides a lot of experience, because at this point, he's probably your most experienced linebacker in the room.
Yeah.
I think that's huge, man. If they can continue to develop, and he can continue to develop in this next offseason, he'll grow a little bit more. He'll get a little bit stronger, add more size to him while keeping his functional speed and agility and quickness up. It's going to make the linebacker room, it's going to lessen the blow of Danny Stutzman's departure too, because losing Danny Stutzman, that's going to be a big loss, especially from a leadership perspective. If Kip Lewis can step into that leadership void and help fill it, but also continue to provide that production and step into a more full-time role, I think Oklahoma's defense is going to have a chance to continue to get better and better.
Yeah, it's not as easy as people think when it comes to putting on weight on your frame. Yeah, you can do it probably fairly quickly, but you're not going to do it in a very efficient.
I just did it over the last 24 hours, man. Put on so much weight.
Ooh, boy, the weight that I put on. Recording this morning was a little tough with all the weight that I added, but it takes time for you to be able to do it where it's effective and it's efficient. So for me, I'm going to have to go hit this treadmill once we get everything done for the day to try to burn some of that down properly to where it's actually used right, because I stuffed as much as I possibly could into my system, but I digress. When it comes to a player like Kip Lewis, and as he's adding that muscle, you said it perfectly. He needs to be able to add size while also not hindering his speed, agility, and movement. And he's doing that. He's compounding it year over year. And that's kind of how the body works when it comes to exercise. If you do it in a slow, methodical way, it doesn't affect a lot of other things around you. And so for Kip, being able to maintain his speed, maintain his lateral movement, and be able to be disruptive at linebacker, adding that weight and those proper intervals, He's going to do nothing but excel at the spot. Then, so you got him and Kobe McKenzie running that defense. Boy, it's going to be fun seeing those dudes just own it going into next season, and then having the young pups right behind them ready to jump in there and play.
Yeah, we know the linebacker group is going to continue to get better. It's going to continue to develop, and they're going to have a chance to shine out from the shadow of Danny Stutzman as he departs for the NFL. What's left for Oklahoma to go get in the transfer portal? Let's discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better. And it's the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They have the great feature inside the app that lets you see your seat from inside the app, what you're going to be looking at. You don't have to worry about line of sight. You don't have to worry about obstructed views because you can see a panoramic view of what your seat's going to be looking at from inside the app. They get the all-in pricing. If you toggle on the feature, it shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Your purchase is also covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry over at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Special shout out to Joe and to Clay, who hollered at me out in public this last week, just letting us know that they watch the show. It's always fun to meet the everydayers out there in public. So it just good times. Jay, the Oklahoma Sooners have attacked the transfer portal, I think, in a really, really unique way. And it's a way that a lot of people are scoffing at. They're, trolling at Oklahoma, talking about Broklahoma all over again. Here we go. But what's left for Oklahoma to really go get? What else do they need in the transfer portal?
Yeah, with us getting down in the roster numbers to 105, which I think now we're hovering around between 103 and 106 when it comes to the 85 scholarship players and then the 20 walk-ons that are allowed on the roster. We're about at that number now. So we're slowly starting to be able to go after players that we actually want on a larger scale, while at the same time recognizing one thing that I think people aren't getting. There's still a lot of really good players left to jump in the portal, not be in the portal right now. I'm talking about jump in the portal, because you still got playoff games this weekend and it's still a national championship coming in January 20th. So until all those games are done, all the best players aren't going to be in the portal yet. So you still got a few more from those teams that you probably will want to get your hands on, while at the same time recognize that a lot of the players that have hit the portal today that's actually available, a lot of them are guys that are, they've left teams, and some had production, some did not. And so for us to be sitting here wondering why aren't we going after the quote-unquote top players, we're getting players that fit our exact needs. We talked about it in the first segment around Moneyball concept. You're looking for people with production that actually produces somewhere. And so with Brent Venables and Zach Alley as well as Ben Arbuckle, they're looking around the way that their system is set up. I think we've got what we're looking for, while also not trying to stifle our development of the young players. So to me, John, I think if we add additional players, we're going to need another wide receiver. That's definitely a guarantee. We need one more. That way you bring in 4 wide receivers, and that will help to fill any type of gaps you have and allow your young players still an opportunity to play. On defense, we probably will need another edge just because of age. You got to have some additional, one more probably veteran at the edge role, probably another veteran at the defensive tackle role to help fill some there. And I'd say a corner. I'd say that's probably the last 4 players you want to look at getting your hands on. And then you may, end up letting go a couple of PWOs here or there if you need to, or you just stick tight and be good. But I do think we grab a corner. I think we grab a defensive lineman, either edge or tackle, and I think we grab one more wide receiver. What do you think we need to add additional, or are those the ones that you're believing as well?
I mean, for defensive line, the interior aspect, it all depends to me on what Dominic Williams decides to do. If Dominic Williams is staying one more year, I'm good at defensive tackle, to be honest, because I've got Dominic Williams, I've got Jaden Jackson that can both man the nose tackle spot. I've got David Stone and Grayson Halton that can man my 3 technique. I've also got Marcus Strong and Trent Wilson coming up behind those guys. So I feel pretty good with that rotation, especially that top 4. Obviously, you can never have enough interior defensive line depth and help. If there's a dude that's out there that can jump right in to the defensive tackle rotation, by all means, you can go at him. But if it's a guy that you're just looking to develop, maybe not. That's not where I'm looking to add a defensive tackle. At defensive end, same thing. If you can add a guy that's like a Princely Unmanmielen, who was an impactful transfer for Ole Miss that made the move last year. If you could add a guy like that steps in and is a day one bona fide difference maker at edge that allows you a bookend pass rush between him and R. Mason Thomas, then yeah, go for it. If you're just looking to add a guy just to add depth, I think you've got good depth. I think you've got a group of solid players that you can continue to develop. You probably, it might make sense to add a guy with some veteran experience. I mean, this would be actually the best year to have a Caden Woolard. He couldn't really break into the defensive end rotation last year because Trace Ford was around, Ethan Downs was around. He got some playing time, just didn't get a lot of it. And then obviously he got injured at the end of the season, but this would have been the perfect year to have him because he could be a veteran that's in your defensive end room that can play opposite of R. Mason Thomas. And yes, you're going to play him a lot, play him on early downs. And then if you're trying to give Danny Okoye and PJ Adebaware some pass rush snaps, then you can throw them in there in pass rushing situations and they don't have to worry so much about playing the run and rushing the passer at the same time. They can just get after the quarterback. But so somebody kind of like that, right? A veteran with experience that can slide in and play opposite R. Mason Thomas, I think makes a lot of sense. Cornerback, that's going to be the intriguing one because you do bring back Eli Bowen, who you really like. You do bring back Gentry Williams, who to me, he's a star if he's on the field. And then you bring back Jacoby Johnson, who's got all the athleticism in the world to be a big time player. This was just a first year struggle at times for Jacoby. I mean, I'm sure he did some good things out there. We don't get the benefit of the all 22 to actually see what he looks like in coverage. We only see the mishaps. And that's the downside of playing corner in the modern era where all you get is the broadcast view. You don't get to see what are some of the good things he does out there in coverage. You only see where he falls down against Missouri, and that's really all you have to go on. But again, he's got all the tools to be a big time corner at the SEC level. Got to just continue to develop. So if you want to add a veteran there as some insurance at cornerback, I think it makes a little bit of sense. And then I think wide receiver can make sense too. But even if you don't, I like the guys they brought in. I think that they have a chance to be good players for Oklahoma. But do you need to find like an Evan Stewart type, that kind of a player, someone who's a legit bona fide wide receiver one? If you can find that, if you can add that through the portal, then by all means go do it. You know, somebody like they're not out there in the portal right now because again, a lot of these teams are playing, but look at last year's transfer portal class. It was full of those guys between Evan Stewart and Isaiah Bond. Like if you can find one guy that is like, hey, he's our number one wide receiver the day he steps on campus, then yes, go get that guy.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of those. They're few and far between, which that's the nature of the transfer portal is you got to hope that you can hit a lick, I guess you could say, when it comes to finding some of the top players and getting your hands on them. But there's not that many of them. And honestly, outside of that, a lot of these dudes that are jumping in the portal, truth be told, are jumping in and trying to get that last bag before everything gets regulated. So there's not very many players for the Oklahoma Sooners to truly jump their hands on. Like if there's one player that I would have wished we would have probably went a little bit harder on was maybe like an Eric Singleton Jr. at wide receiver from Georgia Tech, maybe a Deuce Robinson. The problem you're running with Deuce Robinson is now because he went to Florida State, that's a legacy. That was, I think his dad played there or something like that. And so because of that, there was a much better chance of him ending up at a school like that. Then, of course, and we see in our mentions often, Zachariah Branch. Would love to have someone of his talent, but that means you have to take his brother, in which that adds to the safety room, in which we all know that our safety room is actually really good. It's kind of hard. Robert Spears Jennings put out a video not too long ago, saying hoop season, showing a lot of his highlights, and my goodness, that dude should end up all SEC preseason, all conference period. Yeah, so I expect him to be there. And as long as he comes back, so there's no reason for me to even believe that a Robert Spears Jennings or a Peyton Bowen needs to be replaced by a guy in the portal. So with the young talent that we actually have that we're ready to see play, having the right amount of veterans right in front of them, especially internal veterans, really helps going forward. And so I think that we're on. I mean, there's some players I would have liked to have had, but at the same time, I think it makes more sense for us to pump our brakes and play the guys that we actually recruited. Let's see if we can show that we can develop. Now, Jay Valai, you're on the clock, my boy. I want you to develop one of these young corners into something special. Eli walked in and started doing it. I need you to get Jacoby up there. You get Jacoby in there, at that point, I can call you elite. I think you're really good, but then I can call you elite.
Yeah, and I think Emmett Jones, listen, he was hurt by hurt this year. A lot of injuries really affected his wide receiver room. But there are a lot of people that got questions about EJ right now. I still believe in him. I think he's a really good wide receivers coach. But now it's time to take all this unearthed, all these unearthed gems and develop them into big time players at the SEC level. You mentioned Eric Singleton. You mentioned Zachariah Branch. You kind of got those kind of guys in a Deion Burks and Isaiah Satania, slot guys that can be kind of productive players after the catch. So anyway, I think Oklahoma, honestly, where they stand, it's a pretty solid roster. If you can add a difference maker here and there, if it's an all conference type player, a guy that's got, top 100 pick written all over him, in the portal moving forward, then add it. But you've got to have a balance between the transfer portal and your high school recruiting, because if players only see that you're going to go after guys in the portal and you're going to recruit over them through the portal all the time, then you might have a little bit more difficult time getting high school players. You're going to have to pick your shots. It can't be live and die by the portal, because I don't think it works. I don't think it's going to work long-term. Ole Miss just spent gobs of money in the transfer portal last offseason. And where did it land them? Outside of the playoff with a loss to Kentucky. So we can talk about wanting to go spend big in the portal. You've got to have a balance between it, and you got to find the right guys. You got to find the right kind of guys that are going to be cultural fits, system fits, and dudes that still have a lot to prove. And all these FCS guys that Oklahoma's added, these group of 5 guys that Oklahoma has added, they've got a lot to prove. They're by no means solidified future NFL stars. They've got to continue to go prove it. And actually having a little bit of chip on your shoulder, that's a great little spot to be if you're a developing player.
Yeah, it is. And that's what you want. You want guys that are pretty chippy, quote unquote, scrappy, but also ones that feel like they're a little slighted and they want to go out there and prove themselves. And right now, having good talent on your roster already builds that competition anyway. They've already built their bond and brotherhood. Now we need to just get them all out there together, and let's see if they can put their money where their mouths are.
Yep. And that's basically going to be Oklahoma's slogan for 2025. Just prove it.
Prove it. Revenge tour, baby.
That's right. They got a lot to prove, I think, to everybody, even Oklahoma fans. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. You can also check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube. You can follow me at John9Williams and read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you like to do your social media stuff. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer.
Sooner.